Welcome back to the Sports News Analysis YouTube page. I'm just continuing my Week 14 NFL previews with the game between the Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts. As usual, you can catch me on Twitter at SNewsAnalysis. That's at SNewsAnalysis. Colts at home this week to play the Titans. Colts come in with a record of 8-4. The Titans with a record of 4-8. Colts coming off a win last week in dramatic fashion to the Detroit Lions, and Tennessee coming into this game with a record of 4-8, coming off the heels of a loss to the first place Texans at home. As far as the Colts go, in their win over the Lions, we saw yet another good moment in the young career of Andrew Luck. He led the team from behind in the fourth quarter on the road to defeat the Lions. We saw in that game last week, the Colts are a team this year who, when faced with close games, have found a way to win them. And the Lions are a team that have found a way to lose them. So the Colts prevailed last week. Andrew Luck was the story of the game. In a game where he was forced to throw 55 times, he was able to lead his team to the win. I think you'll see this week, though, that the Colts don't want him throwing between 45 and 55 times a game. I don't think it's a pattern they want to continually set every week. We look for Bruce Arians and the Colts coaching staff this week to try to establish the run a little bit more and see what they can get out of it. I mean, they have two running backs in Vic Ballard and Donald Brown who average less than 4 yards a carry. So saying you want to establish the run is easy to say midweek. But once you get in the game and it's not happening and you need to put points on the board, they could revert right back to Andrew Luck, putting the ball up 50-55 times. But we think going into the game, they'll try to establish the run a little more against this Tennessee defense. As far as playoff implications for the Colts go, they are firmly locked into that first wild card spot as of now, as the 5 seed. They are one game up on the Bengals and the Steelers with 4 games to play. They have this game versus Tennessee. They have next week versus the Texans, week 16 versus the Chiefs, and then week 17, they wrap up with the Texans again. Just because of how the schedule breaks, if the Colts can get a win here and get 9 wins, we think at minimum the Colts will have 11 wins because the game next week versus the Texans, will be tough. But they have a week 16 game against the Chiefs, which you have to pencil them in for a win. I know the NFL, anything can happen, but week 16 a win against the Chiefs. And week 17, it's looking as though right now the Texans won't have much to play for. So thinking they'll get a win in that game, we have the Colts penciled in as minimum an 11-win team. So this is a big game, though, to make sure they get to those 11 wins in a game they can't look past Tennessee, who may be a little bit down this year, but is a division rival. The Titans come into this game 4-8 off a loss to the Texans. You saw in that game last week, you just saw a better team execute the way good teams execute and wear down and sort of just consistently and methodically beat the Titans last week down in Nashville. The Titans, their offensive line has been less than spectacular, and that's led to 2 things. First of all, the development of quarterback Jake Locker. Now, when Jake Locker came out of Washington, he was much ballyhooed for his athleticism. And to be honest, right now, that's probably the best trait he can use for the rest of this season at least because of the lack of consistency in his offensive line. We think that stunted his growth as a young quarterback. He was a developmental sort of project anyway. And when you put a quarterback like that behind a porous offensive line, we think you see the results that have hampered Tennessee thus far when Locker has played. And it also has an effect on Chris Johnson. And that effect is twofold. One, they've been getting down early in games. So when you look at the fact that Chris Johnson had 13 carries last week, well, a big part of that is because when you're down early, you're going to abandon the running game quicker. And that's what happened last week versus the Texans. And then even when he gets carries, it's more his improvisation and finding holes and occasionally breaking big runs that have been good for him this year. They've lacked the consistent 5-6 minimum yards a pop that they had a couple of years ago when Chris Johnson rushed for the 2,000 yards. So Tennessee, they're kind of one of those teams that's in a precarious situation. They're not rebuilding, but they're not ready to win. So they're kind of in limbo right now. A lot of how this organization will succeed or not going forward will be in the hands of Jake Locker and his maturity and his development into what they hope is a top 10 pick. Jake Locker was the 8th pick in the draft 2 years ago, so he needs to start turning the corner, showing some promise as a first-round pick and as a top 10 pick. We're looking for 2 AFC South teams, Tennessee and Jacksonville. They're going to go as their quarterbacks go. Both quarterbacks drafted 2 years ago. Both have not developed like some of the other younger quarterbacks in the NFL. So definitely a situation worth monitoring down in Tennessee. As far as this game goes, I like the Colts to be able to put pressure on Tennessee. We don't think this game on Tennessee from a quarterback perspective, I don't see this game getting out of hand by any means. I see this game for the Colts being similar to the one they played a couple weeks ago at home versus the Bills. A team they're better than, a team they can exploit defensively, but a team that is not so great offensively, and that the Colts defense will be able to sort of do their thing and limit the points scored by Tennessee in this game. So we like the Colts -5 in this game. I like the Colts to go 9-4 here and solidify their playoff standing in the AFC. I expect a workmanlike effort from Andrew Luck in the offense. Let's call it a 27-17 type win for the Colts here at home against Tennessee. And we'll see what the Colts can do next week against the Texans in Week 15 as we head forward here. But again, Colts -5 at home this week against the Titans. And we'll be coming back with some more previews here in Week 14. Thank you.